The Magic Paintbrush. A Chinese folk tale. Audio and visuals brought to you by ThoughtNet Solutions. Long ago in ancient China, there was a small farming village. Poverty was spread far and wide, but the people took care of one another. So when a young boy named Ma Liang tragically lost both parents, he was basically adopted by the whole village. The young orphan boy loved his village, and the village loved him. Ma Liang taught himself to draw with sticks in the dirt and charcoal on walls and wood. He loved to use his art to bring joy to the other children and neighbors. The poverty they all lived in and the loss of his own parents led to Ma Liang frequently daydreaming about improving everyone's lives in the village. Eventually, the boy became very skilled at creating art with his limited resources. The entire village wished very much to see Ma Liang flourish with better art tools, but everyone was too poor to afford even a paintbrush. So many people began lighting incense offerings and praying to ancestors to bless poor Ma Liang. One night, while the boy was sleeping, he was visited by a very old, wise, and kind man in his dreams. The old man smiled and told Ma Liang that he had such a big heart for someone who had already lost so much. He continued to tell the boy that he had a very special present that he was entrusting with him. Ma Liang slept very well that night and woke up on his little mat with the most simply beautiful paintbrush beside him. First shock, then awe came over him. Then an enormous smile erupted across the boy's face. He ran to the closest neighbor and saw May, an older woman. He excitedly showed her the brush, and May clasped her hands together to her heart and exclaimed, "Oh my, I prayed to my ancestors so much for such a miracle. Who could have brought you such a gift?" "I'm not sure, but this old man came to me in a dream last night. He told me that this was a gift. He felt familiar, like a grandfather I never met." Another villager taught Ma Liang how to make a simple black paint from soot. After the paint was made, the boy just practiced some simple strokes of the brush, marveling at the beauty of the glistening paint. Finally, when he was ready to really practice, he decided to start with a simple fish painting. As soon as he finished the final stroke of the brush, he jumped up with fear. The fish started moving. It flapped and splashed itself right off the paper and onto the floor. Ma Liang quickly threw it into a barrel of water and stared at it in disbelief as it swam around. He then stared at the magical paintbrush and then decided to paint something else. Maybe something not alive this time. So he painted 2 bags of millet and some sorghum. They too became real, and he quickly opened the bags and let the dry grains fall between his fingers. Then he painted bags of rice and baskets of eggs. Marveling at this bounty of food, he grabbed as much as he could in his arms and immediately started passing everything out to the other villagers. He fed the whole village in just one night. Everyone marveled at the magic and started giving suggestions, like fruits and delicacies that most of them had only heard of. Then a man named June stepped forward and asked, "Ma Liang, do you think you could paint me an ox? My back has darn near given out on me, and I haven't managed to save enough to get one." So the boy painted a very large and handsome pair of oxen for June. He didn't stop there. He painted goats, pigs, and sheep. And then he painted a giant, beautiful pasture to graze on where there was once rocky soil. In just a week, the little village was full of so much abundance and vitality. Then Ma Liang painted the village its own windmill, something that was incredibly rare to find, especially in a small rural village. Finally, the village elder, Elder Shun, approached the boy. "Ma Liang, I think you need to slow down with all the things you are making, everyone. You must realize we have no feasible way of explaining this abundance to the landlord. We can always store away food and hide the animals, but the windmill is just too much." "I understand, Elder Shun," he said with his head hung low. "I just love you all so very much, and I just want you all to have the best." "I understand. Just please consult me on things as elaborate as this," he said, waving his hand at the windmill. The boy tried to keep Elder Shun in consideration from then on, but it was hard for the young lad to say no to what anyone asked for. So he painted watermills, repaired homes, made homes bigger and better, painted a magnificent new well, and finally, he painted one of the most suspicious things of all. 6 strong, beautiful horses. It was unheard of for peasants to own horses. The time came when the landlord Stuart came through to collect taxes on the village. He saw the water wheels, the windmill, the livestock, the massive green pasture, the new and improved houses, the oxen, and finally the horses. The steward immediately turned his horse around to alert the Lord and the authorities. In a few days, the steward came back with the landlord and personal guards. The landlord called a meeting, and all the elders were sitting for questioning. No one would say Ma Liang's name, and they all denied any wrongdoing. Finally, the Lord yelled, "You simpletons! Tell me who is responsible for the absolutely clear criminal activity going on here. If I don't get an answer right now, I will have the whole lot of you arrested." The elders all looked at one another in confusion. Then Elder Shun stepped forward. "I'm the one responsible for this." So the Lord took him away for private questioning at his wealthy estate. The villagers gathered to watch the old man be taken away, and Ma Liang came over to find out what was going on. When the boy heard how Elder Shun had protected him and everyone else by taking the blame for his own actions, he ran from the crowd back to his little home. The boy packed food supplies and ran to one of the horses. He pulled out his paintbrush and readied some ink. Then he began painting great wings upon the horse. The horse looked magnificent and proud as the boy then stroked his face and said, "There, now there won't be any doubt as to who is responsible for this magic." And he climbed on the beast's back, and they took flight towards the landlord's estate. As the lord, steward, guards, and prisoner were entering the estate through the courtyard, they all felt a gush of wind come from above. They all looked up as a gigantic winged horse landed in front of them with a young boy upon its back. "I am Ma Liang," the boy said, pounding his fist to his chest. "I am the one responsible for creating this magic and all the other unexplainable things at our village. Now, please let Elder Shun go and take me instead." And he jumped off the horse and put his hands out for surrender. The Lord had the flying horse taken to the stables and separated the old man and boy. When asked to prove his power, Ma Liang painted a flower that came to life off of the paper right before the Lord's own eyes. When the landlord demanded he paint some gold or silver, the boy refused. "You would paint me a useless flower, but not something of actual value?" yelled the Lord. "This brush is for those in need. What need do you have?" And the boy cast his hand around at the Lord's exquisite estate. "Maybe if you could value the simple beauty of a flower, you would have been married with children by now. But you are too busy coveting riches and bleeding the poor with taxes." The greedy lord, in a fit of rage, sent Ma Liang away. Every day he sent the guards to intimidate the boy into painting him more wealth. And every day the boy refused and didn't leave his cell. Finally, the Lord ordered them to take Ma Liang's magic brush and bring it to him. But when the Lord painted with it, nothing happened, which frustrated the landlord even more. The rich man grew more and more impatient till he finally decided to send Elder Shun to the boy's cell, imploring the elder to talk some sense into the foolish boy. The boy was so happy to finally see the old man once again and unharmed. They talked for a while, and Elder Shun said, I noticed after you first painted the horses, you later added wings to one? The boy chuckled. Yes, I'm not quite sure how it all works still. Ah, you changed things according to the need then. Shun leaned in and in a quieter voice said, How about you give the Lord exactly what he asks for? The boy stared, confused at the elder at first, then slowly came to understand. The boy bowed his head to the elder. The boy then met with the Lord with a proposition, something grander than anything he had already asked for. A whole island made of gold, and a new ship to take him to it. The landlord nearly fell out of his seat. I'd be richer than the emperor himself. The Lord immediately sent for a silk tapestry for the boy to paint on. The boy spent days working on the painting. The landlord marveled at the finished work. The rich man's greed made him so gleeful he took as many of his servants and guards with him to the ship to help him carry off the gold. He only left a single guard and servant to look over his prisoners until he got back. The two he left behind didn't care much for the greedy man, and actually liked the company of the humble old man and boy, so they allowed them to be very comfortable around the estate while the Lord was gone. The boy waited until the Lord would have been halfway to the island, and he went back to the tapestry and began painting something new. He began to paint a huge storm. He made the storm so big it began swallowing up the ocean, then it swallowed up the ship, and eventually it swallowed up the entire gold island. The Lord and his ship were never seen again. Ma Liang changed according to the need. But the boy was not done yet. A month went by, and a mysterious funeral was being held for the Lord. An enormous number of people showed up to this funeral. As all the funeral attendants entered the late Lord's previous estate, Ma Liang stood up from a balcony. He was accompanied by government officials. With very proper-looking documentation, the officials stepped forward and announced that this young man was the long-lost son of the deceased landlord. And not only that, he was also personally left as sole heir of this entire estate. The two servants that the Lord hadn't taken with him said nothing but nod in approval. The boy had privately painted the official documents into existence, with a little help from the servant who happened to be the Lord's scribe. No one was the wiser, nor noticed that Ma Liang's tiny, unknown village seemed to go missing, and now lived comfortably in the grand estate. The boy and his village lived happily ever after.